Hello everybody, happy Monday. Here we are again, another Monday. It's getting close to the end. I can feel it in my blood. So I've brought Moz along, obviously, and I've also brought Edgar along. Now, Moz isn't very happy about Edgar being here. He gets ever so jealous about the limelight being taken from him. So if Edgar falls off, don't think he's fallen or jumped. I think Moz may have pushed him. So you just keep an eye on him for me, please. Right, I'm back to read part of chapter 14. I've just had a quick flick through and it's quite a long chapter, so I'm only going to read about half of it, just under half I think it is, so that we don't lose the point of the chapter, because it's a really, really good chapter. So if you remember, the last we heard, the crows have just taken Clovis, who they think is Finn, out of the museum and heading to the Cardinal. I think it's called the Cardinal, yeah. Can't remember what the boat's called now. I'm fairly sure it's called the Cardinal. We'll find out in a minute, I think. Okay, anyway. So chapter 14. Come and see her, said Finn. Come and see your namesake. He got into the canoe beside Maya and Miss Minton and paddled round to the side of the Arabella so that Miss Minton could see the name painted on the bows. Miss Minton put up a bony hand to trace the letters. For a while she was silent, and then she said, "It's a better name for a boat than a governess or a housemaid." She sniffed and felt for her handkerchief, the same one with the initial A on it that had lent to Maya in the that she'd lent to Maya in the cab. And once again Maya thought what an idiot she'd been not to guess what Finn had guessed so quickly. "He said if he got away and got himself a boat, he'd call her after me," Miss Minton went on. "I didn't help him all that much. He'd have done it anyway, but he never forgot a promise." They were in the lagoon. It was the day after Clovis had sailed on the Bishop, that's what it's called, the Bishop. The twins and Mrs. Carter had gone to church. But when Miss Minton had shown Mrs. Carter the mysterious bruises on Maya's arm, she'd got permission to keep her at home, and as soon as they were safely away, Furo had come to fetch them. Back in the hut, Finn began on the questions. How did you know? How did you know who I was as soon as you saw me come out of the trapdoor in the museum? You're so like your father. The eyes, the way your voice is pitched. He wasn't much older than you are now when he ran away from Westwood, and I knew he'd married an Indian woman and had a son. We kept in touch. So when I saw that the crows had caught you, I realised your plan had gone wrong." "You mean you knew what we were planning?" said Maya, not at all pleased. "More or less. Your acting skills aren't great," said Miss Minton, "and as a liar, you're bottom of the class. I made friends with old Lila, and when she realised that I knew Bernard, she told me about this place. But you seemed to know what you were doing, so I left you to it." "We did know what we were doing," said Finn. But Clovis just went berserk when he got down to the cellar. Some skulls came tumbling out of a packing case, and he saw those eye sockets staring at him. Then he fell over a throwing spear, and the lamp kept going out. There was a weird moaning noise too. It was only the water pipes, but he got hysterical and said he felt sick and couldn't go through with it. I suppose it was sort of a stage fright. He really thought that the crows were going to hurt him. I'd promised Maya that I wouldn't let him get too scared, so I stayed. I meant to make a dash for it when the crows opened the door and lead them away from him. When the sloth fell over, he thought it was a bomb. "Poor Clovis," said Maya. "She's always sticking up for him," said Finn. "Still, he gave a fine performance in the end, you must admit," said Miss Minton. Then they asked her about her time at Westwood. "I was just a housemaid," she said. "No one called me Arabella. The butler wouldn't permit it. I was always Bella, except to Bernard." And then she told him what had happened after Bernard had left. You can't imagine the uproar. Everyone was stamping about and shouting, but they were angry, not sad. Then very soon after, the butler found me reading in the library. No one reads the books at Westwood. I was meant to be dusting them, not reading them, and I was dismissed. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I remembered what Bernard had said, that I should go away and get an education. He said there were colleges where you could study at night and earn your keep during the day. So I went to London and I did just that. It took me 6 years to get a degree, but I did it. Miss Minton looked away and permitted herself a smile, for she had got not just a degree, but a first, which no one had done in that college before. "So then you became a governess," said Maya. "Yes, but Bernard wrote to me, and his letters made me want to see the place where he was so happy. I tried hard to save enough for the fair, but I never succeeded. And then this job came up with the Carters. Just 2 weeks after I accepted it, I heard that Bernard had died. The letter came back with a blue cross and "deceased" on the envelope. It was a fearful shock. Then when I came out here and I guessed what the Crows were up to, I kept my eyes open. I knew how Bernard felt about Westwood and that he would hate his son to be dragged back there against his will. "Well, thank goodness you did," said Finn. But Miss Minton now wanted to see the animals that Bernard had written about. Does the anteater still come?" she asked. "And the capuchin monkey?" And Finn said yes, and showed her everything. The hummingbird bottle, the place where the turtle hauled out of the water while the dog padded between them. "I see why he was so happy here," she said. "It's a wonderful place." "Yes, but Finn's going away, in the Arabella," said Maya. "He's going a long, long way," and Minty frowned at the sadness in her voice. "And he won't take me." "No, of course not," said Miss Minton. "That would hardly do." Maya looked up into her face. "Wouldn't you like to go on a great journey, find a place no one knew about?" "What I would like has nothing to do with it. I have my living to earn, and you must get an education." But even though she knew that Finn would not take her, Maya was hungry for all the details of his journey. "What if they aren't there anymore?" she wanted to know. "The Canty." "Then I'll go on until I find them," said Finn. "They have to be somewhere." Miss Minton was silent. It wasn't strictly true. Tribes had been wiped out by illness or fighting or been kidnapped. She couldn't be happy about a boy of his age making such a journey alone, but she had no power to prevent Finn from living his life as he wished. Maya was a different matter. She was wholly responsible for keeping Maya safe, and it was out of the question that she should be allowed to go. It was as they came away from the lagoon in Furo's canoe that Miss Minton suddenly told Furo to stop. A breeze had sprung up, and the leaves of a tall, broad-leaf tree blew to one side. She'd seen on its trunk a large and most exquisite butterfly. Miss Minton did not chase butterflies, but this one was so enormous and so beautiful and so still that she clambered out of the canoe and went to look. "My goodness," she said. The butterfly was still because it was dead but perfectly preserved in the web of a large spider who had left it there and would probably come back and eat it later. Very carefully, Miss Minton took the butterfly from the tree, using her handkerchief so as not to touch it directly, and carried it back. "Oh," said Maya, "I've never seen anything like that." And even Furo shook his head. The brilliant yellow and black of its wings ended in two long tails, like the tail of a swallow. "It looks special, doesn't it?" Maya went on. "Professor Glastonbury will know what it is." Miss Minton nodded, trying not to feel excited. "It is most unlikely that it will turn out to be anything unusual," she said firmly, but Maya saw her looking at the creature lying on her lap again and again. In Manaus, it quickly got about that Finn Taverner had been snatched by the Crows and taken on board the Bishop, and that it was the Carter twins who had betrayed him. The reaction of almost everyone was anger. Anger with the Crows, anger with the twins. Colonel de Silva was particularly upset. All the trouble he'd taken to lead the Crows astray had come to nothing. He felt he failed his old friend Bernard, and he was going to miss Finn. "I'd better go and see what's to be done about the Arabella," he said on his second in command. He said to his second in command, "And all the Taverner's things. The dog will go wild, I imagine. He can fend for himself." He sighed. "I'll go next week. The Indians will see that no one steals anything, and if those wretched Carter twins come again to ask about the rewards, send them away with a flea in their ear. The boy hasn't been gone 3 days. Nasty, money-grabbing little worms." And he turned aside and spat out of the window, a thing he hadn't done since he was a young cadet and thought spitting was the thing to do. Okay, we'll stop it there. It's not the end of the chapter, it's just a pause. A good chapter so far. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will read you again in the week. Lots of love. Bye-bye.